Hey there, friends. Hey there, friends. Welcome to Westeros Talk, the newest talk show that is burning up the airwaves throughout all of the Weirwood net. That's right, you are here for episode 1. I will be joined by my good friend, Hero with 1,000 Voices. And we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to talk about the coming chaos in King's Landing, Greyscale, and who's going to blow up the Sept of Baelor, or maybe the whole city. We're going to talk about the Medusansa some more, because there's more meat on the bone with the Sansa Persephone parallel and the Sansa Medusa parallel. So we're going to get into that stuff. We're going to take some questions from you guys, and since it is 4/19, April 19th, we're just one day away from 4/20, you know we're going to play a little game. Oh yes. Look at that fused stone fortress. Man, that thing is mysterious. Who built that? Hey, Sean. How's it going, homie? Oh, gosh, you're muted. We've started off. The guest has muted themselves. Are you the guest? That's you.
I wanted those bingo cards to get started strong.
Yes, the drinking game's off to a good start. From Europe, right. It is 4:20 in certain places. Oh, okay. That works. Nice. That works. Greetings to the late night Europe crowd. Hey there, friends. Hey there, friends. So, yeah, we are doing something a little different. We've got segments, and we're just testing this out, hoping to get it going in the future. But thank you for joining us. We want this to be highly interactive. It will be highly interactive. I'm in charge. I can make it interactive. So, yeah, we will take questions from you. We took some questions from our Discord. Of course, if you would like to join our Discord, there's 2 easy ways to do that. You can join as a YouTube channel member Squisher, which gives you some green icon action in the chat and 1 free super chat-like message per month. That'll get you access to the Discord. Or, if you really want to support the program, Patreon, of course, is the way to go, and you'll get a link there. And the Discord is a fun place to hang out and talk and all that. When do the contestants get slimed? Grey Waste Tim. Hey there, Tim. Tim's in the chat, everyone.
I got slimed.
Yeah, no, I don't know about it. The only slime is from praising Garth. So
well, I mean, back in the day, I got slimed.
What's that now?
I got slimed. I was on like a little Nickelodeon thing at Universal Studios, and they slimed me.
There you go. There you go, Tim. Always something. All right, so you've been squished. Yeah, that is some sort of squisher treatment. If you really want to get slimed, hang out down by the water. It'll happen. That's the moral of the story. And speaking of squishers, I do have a giant First Men Explained the True History of the First Men video coming. And you know the true history of the First Men is going to involve the deep ones and all that stuff. So they're in there. That's going to be... I've been saying 90 minutes to myself. I think it's going to be more than that. It's tip of the scale. It's a hefty boy. So, yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching my recent videos. We did one about Jon Conn's Greyscale epidemic, and also about Sansa and the foreshadowing of her offing Peter Baelish. And so we are going to start today with some follow-up talk on both of those things, both because Sean has a little extra something to bring, and because I am sort of responding to some of the comments on the video and what you guys are interested in. And so, yeah, Sean, first of all, Medusa. Let's start with Sansa and the Medusa, because you were telling me that, you know, there's a whole thing about women getting blamed, essentially, for being assaulted by men that we see in Sansa's plot that probably comes from the Medusa story. So why don't you lay out the Medusa thing and cue people into this little bit of the folklore?
Will do. Real quick, though, I am going to just promo I just came out with a Patreon video real quick.
I'm sorry. I'm being a bad host, Sean. I promoted all my stuff and then I just started. It's really embarrassing. I'm trying to get better at this. I do appreciate you. Yes. What are you working on, Sean?
No, you're good. I'm very proud of a Patreon video I put out. It's so in the way that my last YouTube video was kind of just giving the foundations of King Arthur so that I could then go into some deeper dives and the audience would follow. I did the same kind of thing with the Greek gods. So I kind of went into the basis in QnA and Greek culture, history, a little bit of mythology, that kind of stuff, just kind of explaining how stuff got weird. And so that is out. That's on my Patreon. And I am going to be filming in the next couple days here. I'm going to be filming my next King Arthur video. I've got King Arthur, Gawain and the Green Knight, and specifically why it was something that Tolkien latched onto when he otherwise hated the King Arthur lore. So that's and it was, I was really very much changed my plan for the video as I researched. So that was good. I like whenever I learn that much that I have to change.
So a couple of days ago, me was aware of what you've been working on and was thinking to ask you about potential Arthurian themes or plot lines in Sansa's story, because it feels like it has some of that going on.
Absolutely. So, and it very much feeds into what we're talking about here. First off, Peter Baelish is a huge Lancelot figure. And that's something. There are a lot of Lancelot figures. Obviously, when George names a character Lancel Lannister, when he has an entire house called Lannister who repeatedly cuckold people, whose house was maybe formed on the basis of cuckoldry, Lancelot.
Shout out Lan the Clever. Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Rhaegar has some Lancelot in him. You know, he takes somebody else's betrothed to a tower and hides. That is what Lancelot does. He takes Guinevere to the Joyous Guard castle. Instead, Rhaegar takes him to Tower of Joy. So we
right,
see
that's the lampshade is the Tower of Joyous Regard, right? Even I know that.
Right.
But well, yeah, I would appreciate if you could source some of that out. It is always like, there's also Tristan and what's her name?
Tristan and Isolde. Yeah.
Okay, and that's a similar in a tower kind of a thing, right?
And it's the same tower. It's like a Russian doll thing, because Lancelot ends up sheltering Tristan and Isolde at Joyous Guard, but then, you know, in the later Arthurian authors, they basically don't like Lancelot in the adultery as much as the French did, so they ended up they ended up making, you know, all of his adultery and the bad stuff that he was doing, basically he saw consequences for it, and Joyous Guard reverted back to Dolorous Guard, which is, you know, we see some Dolorous stuff going on. It's also an Arthurian thing. Dolorous Ed is doing some Arthurian stuff. But yes, Peter Baelish is a huge Lancelot figure, as a cuckold who abducts a woman, takes her off to the Eyrie. It's a lot like, and it's his castle, to be specific. Mm-hmm. And Dolorous Guard that becomes Joyous Guard, that is Lancelot's castle. He finds out that he's a secret prince and it is his castle. So
okay, so this makes a lot of sense to me, because what George is doing is he's like Sansa's a lot of the surface level Sansa analysis is like, oh, she believes in fairy tales and she's finding out that all the knights are really monsters and the prince is a monster and all this stuff, and she's having her illusion shattered. But the fairy tales are actually pretty dark when you get into them, and so what George has done is he has roped her into this little corner of Arthurian mythology, and her Lancelot is like this Peter Baelish guy, and it's just really creepy.
Well, in her big focus on songs and tourneys as, you know, displays of chivalry and, you know, just like the songs, all that. That's also very Arthurian. There's another Arthurian story where Guinevere asks Lancelot to purposefully lose in a tournament, and he's losing, and then all of a sudden she's like, no, I can't be with the loser. So she tells him to win, and he wins, and he has to come up and like, he won on her behalf, so it's kind of like the crowning a queen of love and beauty, and he comes up and like super awkwardly hugs her in front of a crowd, and yeah, it's very Tourney of Harrenhal. And then there's a lot of that in Sansa as well, where she's trying to be crowned the queen of love and beauty by Loras, but Loras is gay. And then also, of course, there is no real queen of love and beauty because the tourney ends in such a disaster. So also it's, yeah. The whole thing, it's messy Arthurian.
And then, of
But
course, the idea of courtly love, as Jeff is saying in the chat, is supposed to be a chaste, romantic pining for a love that can't be. There is a weird version of that with Sansa and the Hound, where, like, Sansa remembers that she was kissed when she wasn't. There's, he's sort of. It seems to mostly come from him being the only one to protect her when she's being abused and stuff. And so she's 13, and eventually in her mind this turns into a, he's my protector. A little slight. It's romantic, but not really. I think that's what George is going for there. Like, they could come back around with the plot, but I don't think it's going to come back around as a romantic kind of thing. It'd be more like Sandor replaces Sansa's wolf as her sworn shield or something like that, right?
that was one of the takes you had where I was just like, that's yeah, I feel like I should have just known that. Like that just makes so much sense. And yeah, it's really all of her relationships. So you look at like she's pining over a Joffrey that doesn't really exist because she's built him up into, oh, he's this handsome guy out straight out of the songs. Then
Actually, you're right. So let me pause you there. The chat is keying in on this too. She's trying so hard to romanticize the terrible thing she's going through, yearning for her Florian. She tries it on Danto. She's, are you Florian? She's like, nah, you're just kind of a drunkard. But you do want to help me, so I'll give you a little peck on the cheek. Joffrey, she tries to see as romantic Prince Charming. Obviously, that doesn't work out. Peter, she doesn't try to do that, but she's sort of sliding into this relationship where he's like a surrogate father and he rescued her. She doesn't realize that he actually framed her, and she also doesn't realize that he killed her father. So those realizations are coming. But yeah, and then we just read her Winds of Winter chapter where she's now dancing with Harry the Heir, and we don't know exactly how she sees him or really what Harry's going to turn out to be. So yeah.
Well, and she's not able to really have a romantic relationship with her actual husband, Tyrion, either. She's not able to have a relationship with the attempted husband of Willis Tyrell. Basically, like everything is a relationship that cannot be, which is part of courtly love, except it's George's version. So instead of it being like a mutual pining until they both die of, broken hearts and love, it's a messed up version of it. So every single relationship is not able to actually be a thing, but for usually progressively worse reasons. So yeah, it's kind of the intersection of Arthurian lore and actual mythology here, because you went a lot into Peter as a Titan, like a Titan of Bravos, because of the sigil. And that's great. And this is something that we were talking about on the phone a little bit, because you can't separate George from his love for TV and movies and the fact that he's written for TV and movies. And one of his absolute favorites is Clash of the Titans.
Okay.
He's a huge fan of Ray Harryhausen, who did a lot of early special effects before Star Wars and Industrial Light and Magic really revolutionized the space. He was doing claymation type stuff. And he made a bunch of mythology-based Sinbad movies. And then he made Clash of the Titans with Maggie Smith and a bunch of other people. And it's basically the story of Perseus and Medusa and the Kraken, which is actually not supposed to be there. Kraken is from Norse mythology, and it was originally supposed to be Cetus, who's like a roided out whale leviathan.
Yeah, right. I can see why they changed that. They went with a different mythological sea monster that worked better on. Yeah, that makes sense. Also, you can't tell the Kraken where it's supposed to be, Tim, or it's Sean.
Yeah,
I'm looking at Tim in the chat.
Tim's in the chat. I'm risking a lot.
Tim knows you can't tell the Kraken.
Send one after me.
So my parents actually used to call me the Kraken because I had this habit of pulling the knobs off the stereo, which was a big, like, a tower thing back in those days, and I would try to climb it, and I got nicknamed the Kraken. So I just remembered that. Actually, it was like a deeply buried memory. Okay.
Squeaker.
Krakens are deeply buried under the ocean, like Cthulhu. So, but okay, someone in our Discord has a question that fits with what you were just saying.
Okay.
Based on the Tourney of Ashford theory, which is essentially that Sansa will have these series of suitors that match up with the people on Dunk's trial by 7, and it seems to line up. The question is, do we see Sansa getting into a marriage alliance with Fagon or Jon at some point? Because they both could represent that 7th person. I could see situations in which either is possible. I can see Littlefinger aiming for an alliance to make Sansa queen. I think that's the main thing. For Jon, I can see a partnership similar to the show, but with Jon having to marry his cousin after his parentage is revealed to combine their claims to the north. So I don't think there'll be a Sansa Jon type thing in the books. I really just don't see that. But the Fagon thing, I do think that's coming. What are your thoughts?
I'm wondering what mechanism Sansa and Fagon could even meet under, because personally, I think that Fagon he's gonna take over King's Landing. I think that's pretty heavily foreshadowed. I think he's going to die there. So how does Sansa get to King's Landing? And I mean, she got there in the show, but that was so contrived.
So I think it would be more like a plot device that would affect Peter and Sansa's plotting for a time. I don't know that they'll make it to King's Landing, but it might cause Peter to like, oh, let's switch horses. Let's ditch Harry the heir and off him and betroth you to... Because the whole point is she's betrothed to Harry as Littlefinger's bastard. They're planning on unveiling her as Sansa Stark and basically showing her as the ruler of the Vale and the North. And that's somebody who could marry Fagon. So they would need to, go through with that part of the plot. And Fagon's not in King's Landing yet. So it could line up to where there's a certain point in time where it seems like an obvious match. But will Sansa get to King's Landing and marry? That may not happen.
I guess I could see the idea of Peter keeps making these alliances and then burning the bridge behind him. So he used John Arryn of the Vale. Obviously, he got a lot of career advancement out of essentially working for him, which Lysa obviously helped with. Then he marries Lysa and becomes the Lord of the Vale and immediately offs her. And obviously, he's ruling through his son as Lord Protector, but he's ruling. And the son isn't always going to be there. So he's now working on the next alliance, which he may then burn down behind him. So he has Sansa marry Harry the heir after, Sweet Robin is dead, or maybe before Sweet Robin is dead. Could he then change up his plot and make another alliance? Yeah, he does that all the time. He did that with the Tyrells. He did that with everyone.
So I was thinking of the fire mage in Karth. He climbs the fiery ladder. It disappears behind him, and then he vanishes the top. So it's like the ladder of chaos that Peter's climbing. It's not stable. Yeah, the rungs are constantly breaking from under you. So that's true. And so thanks to Claire for that question. And I really think that it's even without it actually coming true, it's going to work as far as political mass in it. Man, look at that water bottle. Show that thing off. What is that?
Oh, it's from Coco, Disney. Remember me.
We do. A lot of people think Sansa's ultimate fate lies in political marriage, but I have a bit more hope for an eventual brighter future. Do you think she'll ever escape this patriarchal system that has abused her so much? That's from Dishonor in the Discord. And I was saying, if she'd need to step through a portal to, my house or something, like Rhaegar did, into the real world. I don't know how else to escape Westeros patriarchy without a portal. But I think the question should be, will she continue to gain agency and get to the point where she is not a pawn, but a player? And it does seem that is her eventual arc. And the offing of Peter is where that happens. Because she's essentially letting Peter set her up to have all this power. And then at the right moment, she can expose him, or he will be exposed. He falls, and then she's left standing. So that's something like that, right?
Yeah. She is getting smarter. I think she's learning what she should and shouldn't say, what she should and shouldn't reveal, playing things closer to the chest. And she has a certain, wide-eyed lack of understanding in certain situations. Like, she does not understand yet that Liza and Peter are the ones who conspired to have her family killed. And she didn't get it when Liza was spouting exposition about it. But now she's working with her friend Miranda Royce. And in those sample chapters, you see the wheels turning. She is playing a more complicated game. She is starting to become a player instead of a pawn. She's still, like you said, very much, subservient to Peter in this game, but it's not going to stay that way. She is coming into her own, and we're watching her, climb.
I think that she heard a lot of stuff that she didn't process because the trauma of that moment of almost getting thrown out, like off the ledge, like she's basically in shock when all that's happening. So I think there's a good chance she will start to process some of that later as she gets little clues, and she kind of has the pieces to put it together. So all be all the spice you need, Sansa Ice Spice.
Well,
Tim thought of good jokes from last week that he didn't get off, and he's coming back with them. So that's good. We appreciate that, Tim.
Put them all in the chat. But yeah, that whole scene that you're talking about, that is a Medusa scene. That is a Clash of the Titans scene. That is very much taken straight out of Greek mythology. We were talking about it as like a Lancelot, willing abduction of Guinevere off to his castle, which the Eyrie isn't his castle, but first he takes her to the Fingers. But there's a Medusa element of this too, because if you look at the original Medusa story, there are a few versions of it. And in one version, Medusa is, kind of a girlfriend of Poseidon. But in other versions, Medusa is a very unwilling participant in, I won't say romantic relations with Poseidon, but yeah, he assaults her, and he does it at a temple of Athena. And that's super, super problematic, not just because Athena would be offended, but Athena is a goddess who is chaste. And so she's very offended by all this, but she can't actually punish Poseidon. So she punishes Medusa, who did nothing wrong in this situation. And even in the situations where, maybe she was sleeping with Poseidon willingly, that still seems like you are way overreacting, punishing one party to another, because they turn her into a monster who people can't even look at. She turns people to stone. And obviously that kills them. But there's also, when you turn people to stone, like a stone statue or whatever, that is, metaphorical death anyway. So she is a scaly lizard monster thing, snake monster thing, carrying Poseidon's babies, and often very unwillingly. And she's the one punished in all this. And not just her, but her two sisters. That's also even more messed up. Uriel and I forget the other sister. But they become the Gorgons. And
a minute ago you said, what did you say? I think you meant very attractive lady, and you said something about monstrous, and
Well, she was a very attractive lady. She caught Poseidon's eye, but she's probably not. She's meant to not be super attractive anymore after she's turned into a snake monster.
What do you have against, certain hairstyles and stuff? This sounds like some sort of bigotry or something. I don't know. I don't like it.
When artists reimagine it and more modern movies reimagine Medusa, they always make her super hot, but with weird snakes in her head. So it is what
I'm
it is.
kidding.
But
you see, to your point, it is supposed to be. Yeah, we get the point. It's a punishment.
But that's kind of the thing.
Sounds
that's
cool.
What Peter
I'd
did.
say it sounds cool, but
it is objectively cool, but it's not something we want happening to us or anyone we like.
Probably not. No, it'd be harder to make friends.
Story. Yeah, and that's what Peter does. Is he abducts her. He takes her to the Eyrie, which is basically like a snow temple, and he forces himself on her. He kisses her, standing on top of her little castle Winterfell model, and unfortunately, Liza sees it, and this is Liza's castle, the Eyrie. So this is kind of like being in Athena's temple. And she doesn't punish Peter.
And they're in the
She
Godswood too, mind you. They're in the Godswood, and Lysa is looking down from the balcony as if she is like a god. Think of I forget which old movie it is, but with I think it's the one with Perseus, where the gods are looking into the pool and they can see what's going on Earth in the pool.
Yes, that's Clash of the Titans. That's the
Okay.
movie we're talking about. Yeah, so that's it was Thetis in Clash of the Titans, who's a very important nymph, but the details of the myth kind of get jumbled around in the movie. But the point is George likes both the myth and the movie. Big fan of the director.
That is his style.
Right.
He loves pulpy, campy stuff as well as the classics. Yeah.
So it's a Godswood. It's a castle. The castle is a lot like an ice temple. You get major other vibes. She is like an other queen, ice queen, standing up on top of her castle, looking down and sees this. And she tries to kill Sansa about it. She's about to drop her out the moon door, which is a stone door. It's like petrified werewood. So it's like a stone door. So it's like, killing her with the stone door is a lot like turning her to stone. Doing the whole Gorgon thing.
You become a little smear on the stone of the giant's lance when they push you out. That's the language that's used.
Oh yeah, a bloody lance is a good lance. But anyway, she calls her a little snake too. Like conspiring to go after my man, you little snake. But yeah, it's all very Medusa coded. Sansa didn't do anything wrong. She's confused about what's going on. She is stuck in a power struggle between two powerful people that she didn't choose to be a part of. It's all very Medusa.
Yeah, it's a very, very strong correlation. So I really appreciate you bringing that because, I did the basic level and I was like, oh, snakes in her hair. It's Medusansa. Aren't I clever? But of course it does go further. So yeah, I really appreciate you teasing that out. And this is interesting because now it's not just symbolism. We're really getting into the guts of her plot, of the way that she is used as a pawn, the way she is assaulted by men, by the system. Peter, rescues her from Joffrey only to do the same thing in a less violent version, but he's using what's the word? When you not manipulation, but coercion, as opposed to like physical assault, but it amounts to the same type of thing. So yeah.
Well, and here's like more cooking of the noodle. Like Athena is the chaste goddess here, and Lysa has the hardest time having, like live healthy babies, and she's got Sweet Robin, but there's a definite theme of lack of fertility on her, especially after, she was forced to drink the moon tea. And Athena, she doesn't take on romantic partners as well as being chaste, but she does get hyper focuses on very intelligent figures in Greek mythology. Odysseus is the most obvious one. And Peter is jerk Odysseus. Like,
yeah, he is. He sails back and forth across the narrow sea a lot. It's a jerk version of everything. So but going back to the Medusa thing, it's interesting the way that George is able to harmonize a story like that with the story of Thiazi and Idun, right? Because it's like, okay, so Peter's also a bird and he's a giant like the Jotun, and he is abducting her to an ice castle, and he gets the chestnut reference in there. So it seems like, this is the way I always try to explain it to people as far as, how to write like George Martin, is that you have to see the similar themes in different myths and see where they jibe together. So you could say, oh, if I'm writing about a flaming sword, then I've got to talk about the flaming sword in the Garden of Eden, but also Excalibur and also Thundar, and he sort of borrows the ideas and makes his own mishmash. But you can do that with themes as well as just something as obvious as a magic sword, like themes about abduction. And so we get Persephone, we get Idun, and we get Medusa. And so basically George is collecting these myths with similar themes and parsing out the symbols to these characters. So that's why it's never like, like is only, if you just take one myth and base your Sansa character on just one myth, and it's like you figure it out and then that's it. but it seems almost like a copy, but by sort of showing his mastery of the theme and exploring these themes and these related myths and then synthesizing them, now we're creating something new that gives respect to everything else, and we're doing it through the most important part, which is the theme, as opposed to just snakes in your hair, which is fun, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and it shows such a complete understanding of these stories. The stories are not complicated. For most of these, you could basically summarize the story of Perseus and Medusa in a good 3-minute quick explanation. The esoterica is what's important. When you isolate the elements that are common to all of the stories, you notice why they say certain things. Zeus having, relations with everybody. It's a storm god thing. It's about fertility. He's fertilizing the crops. It's about the seasons. It's about the natural world. Yes, he's anthropomorphic, but no, he's not just slinging seed everywhere. Like, there's a reason for it, and it's below the surface. So George
it's
really
the same with Robert. Just to draw out the obvious parallel, Robert has a bunch of bastards. Yeah, he's a very fertile storm god, but he's capricious. He fertilizes and moves on. Sorry, that's kind of crude, but obviously
Johnny
he didn't
Appleseed.
take care of the woman in the brothel in King's Landing, who's named her child Bera after Robert Baratheon. He's going to come for me. He said he loves me, and it's like, nah, he doesn't. He's moved on like a cloud.
That's some of my corroborating evidence for the Baratheons are meant to be rose gods, because Bera means roses, and she's a little redhead named Rose, and of course, Robert's always chasing after his blue rose, Lyanna, and he ends up getting with a Florent who have the blue rose, and he names the kid Ned. So it's a lot of or sorry, that's actually, is that Ned? Who's the kid at Storm's End?
Well, he's Edric Storm.
Edric, right?
So
it's the
same
southern
name
version.
variant tree.
Right.
Because Edric Dane's named after Ned.
Right, that's
Edric, close enough. It's all Elric stuff anyway.
Right. But yeah, the Persephone stuff is super interesting because George is aware of kind of the history of Persephone. We've made her into less, and it's largely thanks to the Romans.
Okay, I'd like to hear about this.
Well, so there's Persephone and her Roman version, Proserpine. In her Roman, so the Romans and the Etruscans and all those groups that were on the Italian peninsula, they had their own gods before the Greek gods got there. The Greeks made a bunch of outposts, and the gods kind of got jumbled together. So they had a god named Pluto, who was a lot like Neptune, but he had slightly different connotations, and they kind of jumbled them together. And then there's a separate god that's kind of an offshoot. It got very confused, is the point. But they jumbled a bunch of gods together. And the Greek versions ended up having a lot more weight culturally. So they feel like the Greek gods with new names. But there is a certain amount of the existing Etruscan and everywhere else on the peninsula gods that made their way into that. So that's Proserpine. She's a jumble of Persephone and a spring goddess. And the thing is Persephone was not a spring goddess. We tend to think, we look at the Roman esoterica.
It's Demeter that's the spring goddess, right?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, she's the goddess of the harvest. So, what causes it? When do we know spring happens? Is when the harvest comes. And so Demeter stops the harvest from going and keeps the land in perpetual winter because
Can you actually solve this for me? Is it Demeter or Demeter? Because there's a music company that makes compressors and bass amps and stuff, and they say Demeter, but it is Demeter, isn't it?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm the wrong person to ask. I look at all these word roots, but I'm doing it at like 2 a.m. with no volume on, and I'm just like read. But anyway, yeah. So Demeter keeps the winter going because she's sad that Persephone got taken away. It's not Persephone who causes it, but we've kind of syncretized her into a spring goddess, and in an esoteric sense, it makes sense. You have Zeus, the fertile storm god, who rains on the crops and fertilizes them, and the crops come. So their child, Zeus and Demeter's child, is Persephone, the spring, because that's what happens at the, when those two things meet. So that makes sense. But the thing is Persephone was not a spring goddess. She was, first off, you go back to Homer, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, and that takes place during Mycenaean Greece, so long before what we think of ancient Greece. And he refers to her as Dread Persephone, the lady of the underworld. Like, she is the queen of the underworld, and she's terrifying and powerful and not to be messed with. And the reason why she's thought of in that way is because she used to be the main goddess. There used to be kind of a triumvirate between Poseidon, Demeter, and Persephone, or whatever her name used to be. We don't actually know. They only referred to her as the lady because they didn't want to draw her ire and her wrath by saying her actual name.
That's how you know somebody is ferocious, when you can't say their name. Exactly, yes.
Right. So she was Poseidon's wife. And Poseidon was not only the king of the gods, king of the sea, he was the king of the underworld as well. And Demeter was goddess of the harvest, but maybe also had like underworld connotations, or like she went down to the underworld during it's hard to suss out because so much of it is lost. But there was kind of a triumvirate of three powerful gods in Poseidon, Demeter, and Persephone. Zeus was a lot less important. But then, the Mycenaean Greece collapsed and there was a big dark age. Right. And when the dust kind of settled, Zeus is now king of the gods. He's taken a lot of pointers from other sky storm gods in the area. And Poseidon has been demoted, but also his underworld connotations were given to a new god named Hades. Right. And Hades gets Persephone. And Persephone is kind of divided into multiple goddesses. There are aspects of what used to be Persephone in maybe Selene and Hecate.
And they're also talking about QnA.
Yeah, QnA. So that's like a, isn't that a group? Like the QnA?
I think she's a spring goddess.
Yeah, so the QnA is the maiden figure. They also call her, God, what is the name? It just means lady. Anyway, the point is she was de-emphasized, Persephone. She lost a lot of power, and she came down to the underworld as a hostage now instead of a queen. So yes, she's now Hades' queen, but she's like a little spring goddess in a sad little garden down there. She used to be the most powerful goddess in the mythology.
Okay, so we see this really come to life in Sansa's scene in the Godswood. It's a Godswood without gods, empty, just like me. So she's comparing herself to the empty Godswood. So yeah, this is like a frozen spring. They talk about they couldn't get the weirwood to grow here and stuff like that.
Right. Because it's an underworld location. It is meant to be like a temple of the others, the dead ice gods, and
she's making others. When she makes the little snowmen, that's code for making others. So she's doing some sort of Night's Queen routine, making an ice castle, making others. Yes.
She doesn't know it, but she's apprenticed out to Liza Tully to become a Night's Queen figure.
Which is going to make her very powerful. The Night's Queen figure is powerful. She takes the seed and soul of Night's King and creates others. So she's the one running the show there.
Yeah, I mean, we see it in the reverse of it. We see Melisandre is extraordinarily powerful. She's the fiery version of it, but she is a Night's Queen figure. And Stannis only has political power over her. He is not, he's just a guy.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe he'll drop a dragon blood, but
teeny tiny drop. Let's see. So there was a question in the chat about Sansa.
Well, you find it. That was the werewood's not being able to take root and the Godswood not being a proper Godswood is just like Persephone's garden in the underworld not really being a proper spring garden because it gets no light.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's what it made me think of it. And there's that line about the sunlight in the high hall of the Eyrie. Even the sunlight looks chilly, like it's cold, frozen. So just shifting over slightly to more of a plot-based thing, this is a really good question. What reasons Ned and Cat had for not prepping Sansa for Southern politics, especially her and Arya when they went to King's Landing? I have always blamed this on Ned having PTSD and essentially just trying to hole up at Winterfell and just pretend that all that nasty stuff in King's Landing doesn't exist and isn't going to pull his family in because he lost his sister and his brother and his father to that stuff. I mean, that's the easy answer, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's certainly less traumatic for Liza Tully, but she was promised to one of the most powerful lords in the realm, the heir to the north, and he just gets murdered going down to King's Landing. There's a whole war. People are dying. People, she would have known people that died in the war. Ned is a lot closer to it. A lot of his best friends, damn near his whole family. Like, yeah, they don't want to go anywhere near that.
That's true. His best friends all died in that war as well.
Right. And it's different in the show, which is why we kind of get distracted. But in the books, it's Catelyn who kind of bullies Ned into going down south because he really doesn't want to. He's the one with a lot more trauma surrounding going down to King's Landing.
Catelyn is a bully. That's true. No, you're right though. You're right.
Yeah, I didn't mean to paint her as a
bully.
bully.
No, you're right. I know. We love Cat. We don't put up with excessive Cat slander. Everyone is open to criticism, but yeah. No, you're not wrong.
She has her deserved slander, but she's the target of a lot of weird sexist focus.
We don't have too much of that around here, so we can feel free to level the honest criticism. But yes, it's not even necessarily a mistake to go to King's Landing. The problem was that they didn't have intelligence. Ned didn't maintain sources in King's Landing. He didn't know what kind of person Joffrey was. If he had even one or two good sources in King's Landing, he would have already had an inkling that maybe marrying Sansa to Joffrey is not a great idea. Maybe you want to think about Tommen and Arya or something like that, right? So,
yeah. Well, and even beyond that, they thought they found their intelligence, but they had no idea what game they were playing. Like, Catelyn discovers Peter Baelish. He's a great source of intelligence. Can you trust him? No, not even Catelyn can trust him.
Yeah, I mean, he's manipulated Lysa to deceive Cat, so that's kind of the unfair thing. Like, if your own sister is deceiving you, I mean, who was supposed to see that coming in that circumstance? That's pretty tough.
Well, and then Ned inexplicably trusts him to a certain degree, and Ned inexplicably trusts Varys to a certain degree. And it's just like, why are you going down and trusting all of the people who should be the least trustworthy? And it's just, they're miscalculations. He is out of his depth, and he's grabbing, any floating wood in the ocean that he can to not drown. And the floating wood that he finds are these people who aren't trustworthy because they know he's drowning.
Yeah. And so the Starks come to King's Landing and they just kind of get ambushed. So let me just stop real quick and remind everyone, if you're watching the stream and having fun, do hit the little thumbs up button down there. It helps YouTube know that this is a cool stream that people should watch and all that kind of thing, which it definitely is. So I feel strongly that we're bringing it today, Sean. I feel like we're bringing it.
Oh yeah. We got the deep cuts here.
And so let's see here. Do you think Sansa will have her marriage to Tyrion annulled? Asks Undead Evie, and how will that work? I'm asking you. I don't really know. I'm curious about that.
I tend to think it will eventually get annulled, but one thing that we're going to see when we get into the Winds of Winter is that a lot of big important events are going to happen a lot faster. Kind of like at the beginning of the War of the Five Kings, the scenery shifted very quickly. And that's kind of another thing, is like the war was essentially decided by Peter Baelish in kind of a Trojan horse thing by allying with the Tyrells. And we didn't even know that until it had already happened, until the battle was already lost. So those kind of, quick cut changes are going to be all over Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring. So I tend to think too much will be going on for that to, for them to leisurely take their, annulment and then set up for another one.
I think it'll be a kind of afterthought by the time it happens. I mean, Tyrion's halfway across the ocean. It might be interesting if he comes back with Dany, and then they're like meeting with Sansa at some point, and they're like, "Well, technically, you guys are married." Like, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be a major plot thing, but it'll just be kind of like a funny thing, or something small and interesting.
Yeah.
It could come into if Jon and Tyrion talk with each other, that could be interesting because they already have a friendship, and it's like, oh, you're married to my sister now somehow. Let's see. I want to see everyone's theory of how the remaining Stark children will reunite. Who will meet who first, when, where, if tragedy will happen where none of them ever see each other again. So I've talked about. Thank you, Mimir. I've talked about. I think Bran is going to play this role of helping to reunite the Stark siblings. I think there's a lot of foreshadowing for that. I think that there's a risk of Wyman Manderley trying to use Rickon, right, as a way to sort of claim power in the North. Wyman as the steward in the hand. Of course, Wyman got cut pretty hard just recently at Winterfell, so we got to make sure he survives first of all, right?
Right. But you know what? I don't think he's planning on surviving. You don't say that shit in front of people who murdered at the Red Wedding. You don't say that if it's risky, and he's smart enough to know that. He has already put all his plans into motion if he's willing to say that. So this is more setting things up for his kids who we don't really know if they're, on his level. He's very smart and he plans very far in advance, and he's done a lot to really consolidate power for his house. They were set up to really become the second most powerful house in the North. And as of right now, they're close, behind the Boltons.
True.
So, and that's despite all the losses that they took during the War of the Five Kings, where they were really on the front lines. They had people directly die at the Red Wedding, Anyway, yeah, I think he's going to try to set all these things in motion, but I think the whole Rickon storyline gets resolved after he's dead.
Yeah, so I was just going to point out he doesn't know about Jon and Rob's will, and Jon's last he knew he was at the Night's Watch. So it's not that Wyman is trying, to pit Rickon against anyone else. There's no one else there right now. I'm just saying if he's championing Rickon, and then Sansa eventually moves, to take back the North, and Jon has an arc that leads to him being King of Winter or something like that. There could be a little bit of a confluence there, but I really think that would only be other people trying to pit the Starks against each other. I don't think that'll work, and I think the sort of triumph of the Stark family is that they will remember these bonds and stick for each other. I think there are going to be some things in this story that feel good, and that go right, despite all the adversity and stuff. And like people sticking together in the hard times is the kind of stuff that George likes. He likes to stack the deck against the heroes, but the heroes banding together is kind of what it's all about. So yeah, I feel strongly about that.
Well, and I tend to think that first off, I agree. But yeah, I tend to think it's going to be Jon and Sansa as the first to come back together. But yeah, we kind of saw a version of what you're talking about in the show where Littlefinger tried to directly pit Arya and Sansa against each other. And it was poorly written, and it wasn't believable, and it was weird. Like, she's just going to murder her because of this he said, she said
There was
stuff.
a lot of dumb stuff, but they did get the basic idea right. Like,
Right.
Peter tries to pit the Stark girls against each other, and they stick with each other and topple him. Like, that part made sense, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they will. It may not be Peter who pits them against each other. I'm not sure Peter is even going to spend much time in Winterfell to do his plotting. But
Yeah, no, he'll die soon after he gets there.
yeah.
I'm really interested in Arya, Bran, Wolfpack teamwork. I think so. When I went deep on the Arya and the Wolfpack stuff a few years ago, it seems to me that Bran has his fingerprints all over that too, and that it's going to be both of them Wolfpacking, and I think that's going to be super cool. That Wolfpack is going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big deal in the Winds of Winter, and I think I think Arya, like all of her Nymeria symbolism, like she literally is going to be a queen. And yeah, that stuff's going to be intense, I think.
Well, and I think something that goes under the radar, you've talked about it a little bit before, but Arya is crazy powerful.
Yes.
Only Bran is more powerful, and that's basically provable. Like, yes, Jon had his third eye opened by Bran, and he can somewhat intentionally warg Ghost. We don't see that really happening on purpose with Robb or Sansa. Sansa because her dog is gone, unfortunately, and Robb because by the time he was having dreams about it that he talks about where he was, in Greywind, he dies soon after. Right. So with Rickon, we know he's having wolf dreams. We don't know much about them. With Arya, we know she's having wolf dreams from across the world.
Yeah, we know
she's able to skin change other animals purposefully. So she is already doing more than anybody else besides Bran, and she did it without the benefit of a mentor.
Yes, and now she's skin changed a cat as well, and she did that while awake. So she's definitely moving up, and it makes sense because she's been isolated a lot. Like it's the principle of the faceless men blinding Arya to encourage her other senses. That is sort of all over her plot, because she has no support. She's been orphaned. She's been in these horrible, horrible, horrible places. This like brings out your resilience, and it forces you to dig deep. And you're sort of like the first time she skin changes her wolf, they're fleeing Harrenhal, and they're sore pressed. Her need is very great. They're very worried about being caught. There's a rainstorm. There are people following them, and that night she dreams that she's a wolf tearing into her enemies. And then the next day they're home free and there's nobody following them. So it's like this stuff responds to need. And Arya's been put in these situations of great need. And that has led to her now skin changing a cat. And yeah, so she's very strong warg. It may not be the type of thing where like, oh, Arya was born a level 8 and Rickon's a level 6. It's probably just age and experience and stuff like that. Like, Sansa's wolf died. She hasn't been able to develop her skill. Arya has been able to. So, who knows? But
another thing that's interesting is that when Arya has these wolf dreams from the very beginning, when she has the wolf dream and she wakes up in the morning, she knows it's true. And that's not true.
She kind of does. Yeah, totally.
Else. That's not true for even Bran at the beginning. He thinks he's just having dreams. It takes him a while to realize he's seeing out of Summer's eyes. She, the very first time that you were just talking about, she tells Gendry and Hot Pie after that, they're not chasing us anymore.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. Thanks for adding that, though. I sort of forgot that detail.
Yeah, and when she sees her wolf, her wolf pulls her mother's corpse out of the Blue Fork, she wakes up and she's no longer trying to convince the mountain to go rescue her mother and her brother. She's like, she's dead.
Also
she knows
true.
It for a fact.
That I do remember. Yes. So she kind of trusts. She knows that that's a level of reality there she's seeing.
Yeah.
And yeah, the chat's gotten on to King Bran. And I totally agree with your comment here, Mystic Heartache. Bran will be king, but he'll also end up rejecting Bloodraven and won't become a weird zombie version of himself like the show. Rejecting Bloodraven is a complex idea, but he's definitely not going to be a zombie version of himself. I do think he will eventually download the Weirwood hive mind. So he will be a kind of god king, in a sense. He will have multiple intelligences in his head, but I don't think that'll make him less emotional. That was just something that didn't really make sense to me.
That is how D&D views smart people. But,
yeah, I guess, right. And people who are passionate always turn out to be like Danny, right?
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, he's Summerbrander. And this is something you brought up as far back as the podcast with, his direwolf being Summer, his name being Bran. Summerbrander. It is the fiery sword of Norse mythology. that burns down the nine realms at Ragnarok.
Right.
It is originally Freyr's sword, the god of summer, or yeah, the god of summer. He's a god of fertility. He's a green man. He's a very classic, elven fertility green man figure, Summer King. And we see all that in Bran. But what we also see is the other owner of Summer Brander. What ends up happening is Freyr loses the sword, another giant steals it. It ends up in the hands of Surtur. And Surtur, being a, fiery powered giant and having, this magical fiery sword, that's how he burns down the nine realms. That's how existence ends. So Bran is weaving these two owners of Summerbrander together, the villain and the hero, right? Because Freyr fights Surtur at Ragnarok and dies because he doesn't have the sword. So we see Bran as both the person, the Summer King who brings back the seasons, who brings back, ends the long night, but he's also the person who burns it down. So in that aspect of him burning it all down, he's going to burn down the werewood net. The mechanism for this happening, you're talking about him, downloading it. It's like, yeah, he's downloading it because that mechanism is no longer going to exist for anybody. That power has always historically been perverted to do terrible things. Whether, you believe that it's the cause of the dragon bond, whether you believe it's the others, all of these things, like when you are skin changing things, you are taking away the agency of a person or an animal, controlling them. And that's not good. And it also makes you disproportionately powerful, a la your, warg kings and your skin changer kings that you talked about so much. That has to disappear to have a more egalitarian society. And Bran is going to be the one to burn it down. That's why Hodor carries him around in a wicker basket that used to, wicker being, what you sacrifice, that used to carry firewood.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. It gives you the Wicker Man, King of Winter thing. Kind of just spells it out by, oh, this is what we carry firewood in. Grey Waste Tim is piping up that Lovecraft's Whisperer in the Darkness refers to Bran Macmore, the last king of the Picts. And of course, Lovecraft takes real civilizations like the Picts and the Egyptians and things, and just moves them into he makes a fantasy world version of them. And Bran Mac Feval, obviously, that's a Welsh hero, and there's a version in Irish folklore too. There's lots of Brans in all the Celtic folklore. And so Lovecraft's version, Tim's basically summing it up and saying it's more Tree King Bran downloading the werewood net parallelism. So yeah.
Well, and the Picts were like, they were a group of people in Britain. We talked about them a little bit when we were doing the Celtic stream.
Yeah, we did indeed. And so let's see here. Florian the Fool is asking about Sansa being drunk during a couple of her scenes. The night of the Battle of the Blackwater, with the unreliable narrator and the unkiss and all that. Yeah, that probably is meant to be a factor because she's obviously 13 and doesn't usually drink. So Cersei was sloshed that night, man.
Yeah, that's her way though. She absorbed a lot of Robert once Robert left.
Yeah, so let's we could come back for more Sansa, but I do want to talk about King's Landing. We were talking about burning stuff down, so let's move on to King's Landing for a little bit. And first thing I want to point out is a parallel that Common Era brought up: the Great Spring Sickness in 209 AC. It killed thousands in King's Landing, where that's the city that had it the worst. Bloodraven burned the bodies with wildfire in the Dragon Pit, and this led to a quarter of the entire city burning down. I reread it. I don't know that it's the city caught on fire because the Dragon Pit was burning, but at the same time that the plague was happening, a quarter of the city did burn down. And so basically we've got a plague, and we've got part of King's Landing burning, and this is before Ares hid wildfire everywhere. So he's pointing this out as they are pointing this out as a potential parallel. And yeah, it's right there, isn't it? It's like an epidemic.
Well, and it's perfectly placed because So first off, the entire series is named A Song of Ice and Fire. One of the main reasons for it, aside from that being how Norse mythology's creation myth starts, it's a Robert Frost poem about the world ending in either ice or fire. So when you talk about ice and fire, you have the spring and the summer is the hot time, so it's fire associated. You have the spring sickness, stuff catches on fire. At a different time in King's Landing,
Winter
during
fever.
a winter, they have the shivers. Yeah.
Oh, the shivers.
So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
it.
So it's, uh, the idea is both are bad, right? Like you have your fiery dragon people and they burn stuff down and that's terrifying and it's a power multiplier and power is corrupting and all that. And people shouldn't have dragons probably because it's terrifying and it does damage. But by the same token, having all that icy othery power, and that is also not something that people should have. So we see both given their proper thematic context in King's Landing.
And Greyscale is symbolically an icy disease because it's made to punish the lords of fire, and their cold breath rises from the water now because those are the vapors that cause Greyscale. And the Greyscale stonemen are pretty obviously like a parallel for the whites, with the bridge being like the wall and all this stuff. Yeah. So going back to the spring sickness thing, it's interesting that this is all linked to the dragon pit, because the dragon pit, when there was a different chaotic scene in King's Landing, that's when the dragon pit got stormed and collapsed. And we've been talking about the Sept of Baelor and the idea that maybe the show got some version of the burning of the Sept from George. There does seem to be foreshadowing I'd like to get into. Basically, all the Ice Temple places have this foreshadowing. But mentioning the dragon pit, along with the pandemic here, with the, the spring sickness. Like, we could definitely get a parallel if we get the Sept of Baelor burning down while there is a Greyscale epidemic in King's Landing. So, that's interesting to me. Because it's a bunch of dead people, dead, sick corpses that are being burned in the dragon pit, but it could be a bunch of living sick people. Like, what if the Greyscale victims go to the Sept of Baelor to try to get healed or to be safe or something like that? You're muted. Oh, brilliant one.
Sorry. It was all very brilliant, I promise, the 10 words. But yeah, it's also very analogous to what is going on in Meereen right now, where they are literally throwing corpses to dragons. That's like throwing corpses in a dragon pit.
Oh yeah, you're right about that.
And they're burning them before they eat them, right? So they're kind of burning the disease out. And dragons and dragon people don't get sick anyway. So that's not really, like, they're obviously very well placed to deal with that kind of stuff and prevent those bodies from landing inside Meereen. It's so gross, but it's something that people definitely did with plagues in warfare and in the real world.
Man, I didn't even think about the fact that there is also the Pale Mare raging in Meereen. George really likes to make things bad, doesn't he?
Well, in the Pale Mare, it works on so many levels because obviously, it's biblical, a pale horse death, or death rode in on a pale horse, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have our, dragons who are like death horses. And of course, one of them is a pale dragon who will die and be resurrected and be a death horse. But yeah, it's mare has multiple meanings. Mare is obviously a mother thing, and we have a lot of, Daenerys as the mother. She has disappeared, and so the Pale Mare is kind of usurping her position. There's also the fact that mare means sea. So like, marine or, mer in French. So it's like, the Green Sea.
That's what I was about to say. There's a disease in the Weirwood net that needs to be purified. So maybe that's why he keeps doing it.
Yeah. The purification, I think the disease is otherism, which is very well carried in the Weirwood net by the Pale Mare. We have, Slipnir horses and ice spiders metaphorically or maybe even literally, going through the werewood net, right? So that being the disease being purified by the fiery dragon people, and that being kind of how fire and ice resolve each other, how the green men and the dragon people stop fighting as they ally against it. It feels very Pact of Ice and Fire. It feels very first men allying with the children of the forest to defeat the others who have kind of gotten too powerful and multiplied like a virus, like they do, So it feels like combating a disease.
Yeah, that's what it's got to come down to, is the idea that the weirwood net is infected and it's got to be cleansed. That's okay. That's starting to make sense to me. And then, so as far as the Sept of Baelor goes, or just King's Landing in general, like, just let me count the ways, right? Cersei, so in the way that it happened in the show makes a certain amount of sense. That's one of the cooler things that they did, is have Cersei burn it down just to get out of having to go to the trial and having to face accountability. The thing that let me put it this way. All of the ice temple locations seem to have this impending disaster symbolism. And this would probably be because there once were two moons in the sky, and once one of them cracked, one day the other one will crack too. So that's the ice moon. Its cracking is going to be the oncoming long night. And so whenever we see places that symbolize the ice moon, like the Eyrie, we have this promise of a big disaster, because we're thinking about an avalanche on the Giant's Lance, or we could even imagine it's a volcano. But I think it's more like giants waking in the earth. It's called the Giant's Lance. What would happen if it had an earthquake? If we look at the Sept of Baelor, there's the ice dragon statue of Baelor. We talked about there being an ice dragon in the wall, potentially. The walls has tons of symbolism, obviously, about coming down. And let's see, what other ice moon places are there?
Well, there's the one in Bravos, the big temple, Temple of
the Moon Singers.
But yeah, so something that I've kind of been, we've always had kind of not really been 100% sure whether there were actually two moons or whether there was one moon that kind of morphed its symbolism after a terrible event. And I've kind of been coming around to maybe that could be what happened. I was very sure about two moons, but now I'm less sure. And the way I kind of look at it is moon is an egg, Khaleesi. Moon is a dragon egg, and they are coated in stone. They're very ice coated, right? Anything that's going to be stone is always going to be icy coated. And when you crack it open, fiery dragons come out. So it's like it was an icy moon, but when you cracked it open, it drinks the fire of the sun, thousand dragons pour forth. So that's kind of like what you expect when you have a moon disaster, is for dragons to pour forth.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an ice moon every time, isn't it?
I've that's always been a question from the beginning. I don't necessarily want to go into that too deep. In a symbolism sense, it doesn't really matter, like it's one moon or two. Is Nissa Night's Queen? Are they archetypes? We may never know.
Sure.
So we can, and we see the characters in the story moving from one to the other. Sansa's a great example. She's doing fiery Nissa stuff in King's Landing and icy Night's Queen stuff in the Vale, which is one of the reasons why I think, maybe one transforms into the other. But let's keep it centered on Sansa. So think about how all this stuff, or we were talking about King's Landing. How do we get on Sansa again?
Well, because she was just a good example of the phenomenon, but she does it backwards, which is really interesting because King's Landing is a, symbolic meteor impact site. That's, all fiery dragon, fiery moon stuff going on. And so she is a fiery Nissa. She goes to the Vale, she becomes icy, and the Vale is an underworld location. So it's we talked earlier about her having a lot of Persephone parallels. You talked in the last stream. I mean, she she gets offered a God, what's the fruit?
Pomegranate.
Pomegranate, right? So anytime
Okay,
you
so
see pomegranate,
pause right there.
yeah,
Okay, so Cersei is imprisoned in the Sept of Baelor, and
right,
Sansa is imprisoned in the Eyrie. Those have always seemed like parallel symbolisms to me.
right.
It's Nissa losing her fire and being imprisoned in an ice place. And you'll notice that Cersei, not only is she losing her power, she also gets her golden hair cut off. And when she comes out, she is exposed. Everyone sees her naked and like, she's not so hot. Why did we ever listen to her anyway?
It is 100% Dany. Every element of it, every element is Dany's alchemical wedding. She gets her hair burned off. Cersei gets it cut off. She's naked after this. She gets paraded naked through King's Landing. I mean, Dany lands some dragons and is naked because she had her clothes burned off in the ceremony.
And Dany's version of being inside an icy place, she puts on the white lion pelt, so she's not inside of a sept, but she's putting on a snowy thing, and then she's in the wasteland of the Red Waste. But just stick with the Cersei Sansa thing for a second and humor me, okay? So, okay. Because the Eyrie is clearly an ice temple, and the Sept of Baelor also literally an ice temple, okay? Right. And so Cersei is imprisoned in there, and she eventually gets out, but she's lost her power, and she's sort of plotting against the High Sparrow. So it would make sense if her plot comes around to where she takes revenge and blows that thing up. It would be similar to Sansa bringing down Peter as Lord of the Vale, or potentially, well, just leading to any sort of disaster or downfall there.
Switching sides.
What's that?
It's a switching sides thing too. So like, she's a sun figure. She obviously, Lannister, lion, blah, 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 golden hair. She loses the golden hair, everything that makes her a sun king. She's lost political power, so she's no longer really a queen.
And
right?
Sansa dyes her hair. So it's sort of similar, yeah. And changes her name. By the way, just real quick, they also both have giant protectors named Robert. Cersei has Robert Strong, and Sansa's got Sweet Robin, who has the toy giant.
He did promise he would protect her.
He did. Yeah.
He also said he might pump a bastard in her, which is also very Robert.
Well, he's just learning how to talk about all that stuff. He's not, he doesn't understand all of it yet.
He was too close to the tapestries.
But you can see it's a parallel.
Yeah.
And so what does that tell us about the Sept of Baelor? It tells you that Cersei and the Sept of Baelor may not be done.
No, I don't think they are. And I think that's part of the transition. So when you are this, fiery queen, blah, 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 I think that's a big Amethyst Empress thing, Empire of the Dawn. And then the Amethyst Empress gets usurped and killed. And that's like going to an underworld location. We see all of these characters go to an underworld location. They're plotting how to gain power back, how to escape the werewood net. And when they come out with a new form of magic, and they go hard, and it's disastrous, and it's destructive, and it's brutal. And for Cersei, we know how that's going to manifest. It's going to manifest in wildfire, because that's, she's crazy for wildfire. She loves it.
Yeah, she's got it. Her eyes are like wildfire. That's a really strong clue to me. Now, let's think about this. Sweet Robin, with his giant, he destroyed the ice castle that Sansa made. Okay, yeah. So is it going to be Robert Strong that is sent to do the deed?
No, because and I've looked at this a lot with the language on the Blackwater, where that is kind of somewhat Cersei's thing. It's also kind of Tyrion's thing. Tyrion is the giant of Lannister who unleashed the Jade Hulk.
Yes. Okay.
And the demon giant, Green Giant,
the Jade Demon. All that. Yeah.
So like when we talk about a giant that is green.
The ship is, George describes the ship as a Hulk, and then the giant green demon comes out of it. So yes, shout out Lou Ferrigno and the Incredible Hulk, obviously. But yeah, you're right. It is Tyrion the giant who does that. So yes, that would make sense if Robert Strong did it. And also again, the giant's lance is the mountain that could shake and destroy the Eyrie. So the whole giant destroying the ice castle thing is like kind of done several times. So yeah, if Cersei burns the Sept of Baelor, it might be sending Robert Strong to do the deed, because he can go and set something off, and if he dies, who cares? He's a zombie, like.
He also may be the only person who obeys Cersei at this point.
Or
because he was set up,
depending. I don't know how that works, but
yeah. But I mean, as opposed to the rest of the Kingsguard are going to completely ignore her orders. Mm-hmm. Nobody in the Lannister family or the Tyrells care what she has to say. She's been depowered politically, so that's kind of her avenue back to power, and it is through extreme violence, and that's how it always goes. Dany is the best example of this. Her avenue back to power after she lost her political power because Drogo died and she went to an underworld location. Her avenue back to power is the dragons. And she is not burning down any cities. She is killing people, but they're mostly people like slavers and stuff. We shouldn't feel so bad. But again, the extreme violence, and basically, you're playing chess and you flip over the table. Like that's what's going on. Like you are now playing an entirely different game. And that's kind of why it works. Nobody is going to expect Cersei to just blow up, however many of the most important people in the realm. I tend to think it will be Fagon who gets blown up in the Sept of Baelor. But yeah,
that would be interesting. That could be interesting, eaten by a dragon symbolism. I prefer him to get eaten by Drogon, but yeah, that could work.
Yeah, the green dragon eating Fagon would be very fitting.
So think about this. Let me interject this before I lose it. Aerys gave orders to burn down King's Landing with wildfire, and it was a Kingsguard that objected and killed him instead. So a Lannister Kingsguard. So this time it'll be Queen Lannister Cersei giving an order to a Kingsguard who's named Robert to burn down the city, and instead of killing the queen, he's actually going to carry it out.
And that would really tie a bow on let Robert become the king of charred bones and what was the line?
Yeah, cooked bones and charred meat or something. Yeah,
there you
totally
go.
Ashes and.
Which actually, it just sounds like a Baratheon cookout. If we're being honest, not so bad.
Tim wants to know when the blockade in the Saffron Straits is going to be opened. We don't know, Tim. That's everyone's concerned about that. It's a lot of confusion.
The Jade Sea is off limits, man.
Yeah, I don't have the answers for you here. If I did, I'd be getting paid a lot more by someone else.
The Green Sea. Oh, I'm a real albino, therefore I always get to be Bloodraven. Okay, fair enough.
You can't just read random chat messages. Sometimes
sorry, that caught my eye. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say I singular when I'm talking about Bloodraven, but
asking you to consider an essay on strongest themes or character parallels. Kimberly LaFay says, "Much love to all you do." Strongest themes or character parallels. Can you refine the request? I talk about those things a lot. I did have somebody recently ask me for an example of like how George's foreshadowing works with something that's already happened. And one of the things I mentioned was obviously the Red Wedding, but there's some other stuff. Stoneheart. She's a great example. Like we've already, like her transformation into Lady Stoneheart has been foreshadowed all through Kat's plot. If anyone's got more ideas like that, I definitely think those would be some cool things to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, when George has a big event, he always foreshadows it. That is always a thing. Whether we find it or not is, how well we're looking for it, honestly. But it's always there. Like you're talking about Lady Stoneheart, and she is, people in her family have died, and she says she feels her heart turning to stone. She wonders if she will just, go on like a, lonely ghost and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, that all sounds like Lady Stoneheart. And yeah. Elaine Stone.
Yeah.
if we're back to Sansa here, she's doing the Stoneheart thing right now.
Well, and in a similar way, like she is Elaine Stone in this stone Godswood that's cut off from the Weirwood net. Like it's all of a piece. It's similar to the status that Catelyn is, the state that Catelyn is in as Lady Stoneheart. It's not a good thing. John also has a stone heart. Sam wonders when John's heart turned to stone.
And John Connington will have a stone everything.
It's not polite to mention it, but it's true.
Also, another iteration of the name Elaine Stoneheart, or Elaine Stone. Lane Stone, like you're building something out of stone.
So yeah, you lay like ley lines, even.
Or yeah, which also yes, the wall. It's both. It's a bunch of stones laid down and frozen. It is a ley line. We know it's a hinge of the world. That is a ley line.
What does Sansa do as Elaine Stone? She builds Winterfell.
Yeah.
So she is laying the stones, and Winterfell is certainly built at an important location that's sort of pre-picked. So yeah.
It's also just so funny because, like, who gets credit for building both the wall and the inner wall of Winterfell?
Bran the Builder, but probably Night's Queen did all that stuff, yeah.
Right, and we have our Bran figure. Sweet Robin is basically just, diseased Bran over here. Like, he's his cousin. They're the same age. He has his little shamanic episodes. Yeah, he's Bran coded top to bottom. He's sickly, kind of like how Bran has sacrificed his legs. He's sacrificed his health. He's constantly drinking what is it that he's drinking? It's not milk of the poppy, is it?
Oh, he's fed porridge a lot. He likes to throw it around and stuff. He's always being fed porridge.
Right.
Well, sweet sleep is the drug.
Right.
In the mother's milk, yeah.
Bran is doing, green dreams and milk sleeping after werewood paste. It's the same thing. What?
I'm sorry, that one caught me. Okay. That's what it is, yeah. There's a Red Hot Chili Peppers album called Mother's Milk. That's the joke that we want. All right, so what was I was just gonna say something with the stones, the Stoneheart stuff. Do you think Stoneheart will become aware of Bran, Sansa, and Arya still being alive? I think that the one Stark child that Lady Stoneheart has a chance of seeing is Arya. Arya is the one who gives the gift of mercy. No one has ever needed the gift of mercy more than Lady Stoneheart. So that could be interesting because it could be both an ending for Lady Stoneheart, and Catelyn would be understanding that one of her children isn't dead, which would be a nice way, a little closing thought for her to have. So that could make sense to me.
Yeah. And I mean, I could see it happening that way, where it's like, it's also the child who gave her the most absolute fits. Arya does not conform to the gender roles, and also just really likes getting into trouble. And Arya is a challenging kid to parent in this age, and especially for Catelyn, who is not a tomboy in any way. It would be a nice kind of resolution to that. I could also just see, the fact is she has gone down this road of pure vengeance, where it is perpetuating violence cycles, which is something, George is trying to show that that's not how you get things done. You can't just chase vengeance. It only leads to more cycles of violence. And he does that best with Oberyn's paramour, when she's talking about the sand snakes, like, and then who avenges you and who avenges them? And, it's just a circle forever.
Okay, so for example, hatred is essentially operating like a disease here.
Right.
It infects multiple generations. It spreads. People pass it to each other, and it just brings essentially devastation everywhere it goes.
Yeah, and you have to give it up, because and if you want it to look as much like a disease as possible, you look at the Brackens and Blackwoods. It's like a disease ate their tree.
Right.
You know, and they just keep getting it back and forth. They've even had attempts at resolution where they intermarry with each other and they try to, you know, squash the beef there, but it hasn't worked.
Well, what is working is doing these streams on Sunday. We got 400 people watching. Thank you, folks. And if you have not yet clicked the thumbs up button, please do that for me now. But yes, thank you. This is what we like to do. I said a little something at the end of my very long First Men video where I was just like, thank you for being the kind of person that enjoys very long videos. And I will reiterate that concept now, even though you haven't heard me iterate it the first time because that hasn't come out yet. But yeah, I love y'all. And I'm very happy to be able to do this. So, Gray Plague, Black Plague. Seems like an obvious parallel. We mentioned, you know, Greyscale. There's the more virulent form, which is Gray Plague. Now, Gray Plague, mostly it kills people, whereas Greyscale has this gradual transformation. Gray Plague is a more rapid version of the disease, and basically it either kills you or it'll leave you marked like Shireen, and then, you know, you survive and it's inert. We think. The wildlings don't think so. But point is, the Gray Plague version will kill people. So when I talk about John Con spreading an epidemic, like, it wouldn't be quite an epidemic if people just start to notice their pinkies turning black. Like, that doesn't create quite the panic that we need. We need lots of people to die quickly. And that's Gray Plague. So I asked you the other day, with your knowledge of medieval history, such as it is, not to make you out to be an expert or anything, but like, isn't George likely doing some sort of comparison to the Black Plague here?
Yeah, I think two things are going on. In terms of structure, I think it's smallpox. So you have obviously the chicken pox, which, you know, inoculates you, blah, blah, blah. Smallpox, if you survive it, you are marked. Those things scar you. So it's kind of like the you know, Shireen being marked by anyway. So
and it's on her cheek too. So it's
right.
very comparable.
So the majority of this, though, I do agree, is on the Black Plague. Aside from the naming convention, in George's world, black doesn't necessarily mean death as much as gray means death. And beyond that, you know, we have it taking root in Old Town with the maesters who are all in gray. We have the you know, the White Tower with gray, the High Tower. We have and of course the maesters are called the Gray Rats by some of our favorite people.
And rats, in Bravos, it was rats that spread the Gray Plague.
Right.
Lirio talks about that. Of course, he lost his Sarah to the Gray Plague, and he mentions little rats with stone feet padding ashore, you know, from the ships that brought it from wherever.
Well, and originally we credited rats with spreading the Black Plague. We now know that it was actually like fleas on the rats or something to do with that.
I believe that is correct.
Which kind of, you know, still somewhat the rats. But the point is like the rats, or the gray rats here, spreading the plague from Old Town, it thematically fits.
So what happened in London? Wasn't there one particular Black Plague out like where we get our whole plague doctor aesthetic and stuff from? Like, was there multiple incidents of that, or is there one major one? And isn't it in like some major works of fiction that I should know?
There were 3 major waves of the Black Plague. I don't know if any of them specifically hit London harder, but I'm glad you brought up the plague doctor, because those plague doctor masks are they're ravens.
You're right. You're right about that. And why was that?
'Cause ravens are associated with death. Yeah. It really, I mean, yeah, George did not, you know, pull that string too hard. He still associates his ravens with death. You know, the crone letting the first ravens into the world. The crows are basically just smaller ravens, which we did a whole stream about how that is biologically true.
Mm-hmm. So Greyways Tim is envisioning a cover of Jimi Hendrix's Stone Free with stone fleas.
Hey, and that just brings back Red Hot Chili Peppers.
indeed, who also covered they covered Fire by Jimi Hendrix.
And their drummer's name is Flea.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a small circle.
Stoned Flea. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, so the bubonic plague, yeah, caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, and we've found that like in ancient burials amongst the Yamnaya. It's maybe one of the reasons why the Yamnaya were able to spread so wide, is they carried the
Let's get the
Yersinia
hell away
pestis
from
with them.
this. Oh, whoops, we brought it with us. No, this is good. Also because the bubonic plague is basically cured with really good hygiene. Like if you regularly wash, like you're not gonna usually die of the Black Plague. So who do we know that is obsessed with washing all the time?
Oh, the Unsullied.
Yes, but yeah, and they do seem to be immune to a lot of the diseases, dragon warriors. But I was gonna say Dunk, and Dunk survives all these plagues. He survives the spring sickness. He survives the shivers. He's like,
Pure himbo power kept him safe.
yeah, he's bathing regularly. He cracked the code.
Well, they're in Dorne during the spring sickness the entire time, and Dorne shuts off all its passes and isolates and doesn't get that disease. So, okay, so basically, what are the vibes in London when the bubonic plague breaks out? Like, what kind of things happen?
Terror, disaster, looting, crime, panic. It's just, I mean, we had somewhat of a window into it with COVID a few years back. But imagine if COVID were a lot more likely to kill you. We had a lot less information on it, and we didn't think to or have the mechanisms to isolate or quarantine or do anything like that. We didn't have a society.
Nobody was quite sure how it was even spreading. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and like we really take for granted the fact that like, yeah, we could just DoorDash food. The DoorDasher doesn't need to make any direct contact with the person who prepares the food, who doesn't need to make any direct contact with you. And now you've got your food. You've got, whatever drugs you needed from Walgreens delivered. We can do so many things without actually interacting with people. And so we were able, a lot of the more ancillary effects of having a plague hit us were muted. Whereas you're not going to get that in London, which was one of the most populated cities on earth at the time.
No, you raise a very good point. Food delivery is not available in King's Landing, and in order to get anything, you have to leave the house and go talk to people. Yeah, so that is going to lead to like a lot of paranoia and hoarding, and once they quarantine the city, that means nobody goes in or out, so everyone's trapped inside. Yeah. It's going to be bad. So getting back to, okay, so Sept of Baelor, definitely possible that Cersei will blow it up. Is there a possibility that Jon Con himself will blow it up in order to, like, there's a little bit of a freak out coming for him potentially, because he doesn't know that Rhaegar's son isn't Rhaegar's son. And if he were to find that out, it's kind of going to make his whole life sort of meaningless. He's just been working to put Illyrio's son on the throne, and it has nothing to do.
That's not my silver princeling.
Could he turn against Fagon? I don't think he would, because they've spent too much time together. But it could definitely like loosen him up as far as like, what am I even doing anymore? He's going to die soon. Doing some dramatic final act, like that could be something he chooses to do. I'm just not sure. Like maybe he's trying to kill Cersei. Is Fagon going to have problems with the High Sparrow?
So something that we talked about on the phone, we mentioned a little bit earlier in the stream, is when we get to Winds of Winter, a lot of events are going to be happening really quickly. and we're not always going to have a complete beat on what's going on until after. And so I do think that there will be a plague. And I like the well theory with John Con. So him spreading, the disease, and then while they're dealing with that, and the nobles are trying to stay insulated from that, and Phaegon is trying to have himself crowned by the High Septon in the Sept of Baelor, and pretend as if everything's normal for this coronation. And the Sept of Baelor blows up. And so it's just disaster folded into disaster, folded into disaster. And that's how I just kind of see it happening for a while. And it would also just make more sense with the things that the show made nonsensical. King's Landing is a bombed out tomb by the end of the show.
Right. So, okay. So that's the thing I want to focus on. The bells, this idea that David Dan have that, someone hears the bells and they kind of go crazy. That's obviously something that would only make sense for John Con. So what bells are those, and what does he do when he starts to feel that, burning feeling in his brain that he's got to do something?
What if that is John Con finding out that Phaegon is fake during the coronation while they are tolling the bells for the new king?
I feel like the sound of the bells should communicate something that drives him crazy. It could just be that they're ringing while something is happening. That could happen. But I'm thinking
you don't think them communicating, the bells communicating that they have a new king is the right fit? Because there are a bunch of reasons.
So he's just found out that he's not really who he is, and then he hears the bells ringing, and it's it's too late to stop it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of. I mean, I haven't put a ton of thought or research into that.
Sure. No, we're just workshopping. No worries.
Yeah, I've put a lot more thought and research into the fact that the Sept of Baelor will probably blow up during Phaegon's coronation. That's definitely what I think.
And the bells would ring during the coronation. The bells ring when a king dies. The bells ring at a wedding. The bells could ring for surrender. That's what happened in the TV show.
Yeah, and Dany had some big feelings about it and turned into Dragon Hitler. Yeah, that was justice for Dany.
I don't think Phaegon marrying somebody that John Con didn't want him to marry would do it. I think you might actually be onto something there with the coronation is happening as he's realizing that it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. And then, maybe he's capable of preventing, the wildfire from blowing off, but instead he just lets it happen and, kind of realizing he's about to die anyway. Everything that he worked for is a lie, blah, blah, blah. And
it could be Phaegon's death too. If Phaegon takes the throne and then he's killed somehow, the bells could be ringing, and then he'd be like, oh man, they're tolling for him too. I failed.
Yeah. And then he directs Phaegon's army to just start massacring people. But it could be any number of things. But it's going to happen. It's just too circular. And what's the name of that little Stony Sept? Yeah. Because
that's why I said, are all the stone people going to go to the Sept of Baelor? And is it potentially going to get burned down because somebody's like, oh, all the diseased people are in there? Or
maybe it becomes Stony Sept because he spreads the disease to everybody in there.
Yeah. There's something that's why I say the Sept of Baelor could be coming around in this plot somehow. So we've got Phaegon trying to take the city from Cersei. We've got Cersei desperate to avoid accountability from the Faith and potentially to avoid this conquering army of Phaegons. We've got John Con with the potential to be suddenly disillusioned, or to have Phaegon sort of split ways with him in terms of what they want to do. So there's a lot of variables here. We should expect Phaegon to be greeted by cheering crowds, and these are going to be the last time that anyone cheers in King's Landing. So it's going to be good for a second before it gets bad.
Well, and another thing I think we should not expect in the books that we saw in the movie is Cersei blows up the Sept of Baelor and then just kind of is handed power. Um, and we don't, think too much about it. And theoretically, over a certain amount of time, she could consolidate power because a lot of the big players have been destroyed. But their armies haven't, and people would take control of their armies. We should not be expecting Cersei to retake King's Landing. I don't think she's going to. I think she disappears to the Rock.
Yeah,
But
no, I don't think that whole Queen arc is a TV show thing. Yeah, I agree.
because
Who are the Karl
they didn't
Marx
have
and
faith.
Milton? Hang on, I got a super chat that I don't think I could possibly answer. Who are the Karl Marx and Milton Friedman in A Song of Ice and Fire? I don't know.
So Karl Marx, basically very much against the hierarchy of capitalism, and then Milton Friedman is a
It's
more
like
modern
I think
economist.
Septon Maribald is like your Marxist in the story, potentially. Somebody
Yeah,
like that.
I was gonna say maybe Septon Barth to a point, but there doesn't really exist yet.
Yeah,
They
I
need to
don't
get
I don't know that
past
those are people
medieval
that George would
ages.
really be trying to parallel.
They need to get past medieval ages in order to have people who aren't the nobility starting to be educated and waxing poetic about power structures.
There's a lot of like Oliver Cromwells and
Yeah,
Rasputins in this story.
yeah, and frankly, those are more fun to read about. But yeah,
Yeah, those other guys are a little slow reading, honestly, kind of tough reading. So, do you see a parallel between Grace? This is from Rudy Wild, but parallel between Grayscale potentially taking over King's Landing and the doom of Valyria, with like empires rotting from the inside out. I do think that George obviously shows that pride goes before a fall, and he loves to, show the fruits of hubris. So, in that sense, it's parallel. But I think really the thing to think about with Grayscale and King's Landing is that curse of Garen making its way, to the city built by the last Valyrian. That seems intentional and poetic to me.
yeah. Dragon Lords have to end. That's a big part of it. They would not have named one of the major outposts or colonies of Dragon Lords Volantis, which Vol just means flight. So this is like, either where the Dragon Lords flee to, but either way, Atlantis is built into the name. So, there aren't a bunch of descendants of Atlantis around like, damn, we missed the good old days. Like, they all died. They're gone. They sunk into the ocean. The Doom of Valyria was very much like that. And the people who tried to take over later, like there were some Dragon Lords in Volantis, tried
Dude,
to
you
take
haven't
over.
read Graham Hancock, have you? There were this group
Uh,
called the Seven Sages. They took the Atlantean wisdom and they carefully carried it in those handbags and they spread it around everywhere. And that's why people know stuff.
I was gonna say I have read Graham Hancock, but yeah, I really wanted to believe Atlantis, but actually it turns
I
out
too
that
wanted to believe, but
it was largely,
science,
yeah, it was an
archaeology and
academic
genetics.
exercise
And
by Plato. So,
yeah, glad we had that
but
covered. We've just sprung some people loose from the alternative science complex. I feel it.
yeah, sorry about it. But yeah, it's the Dragon Lords. They have to die. That has to end for the same reason that Bran has to burn down the werewood net and end the mechanism of skin changing, green seeing, otherism. Dragons have to end too, or dragon riding at least. So we're gonna see the end of it in the same way that Valyria was destroyed in a big doom. The dragon riders who tried to take over Valyria's former empire from Volantis got murdered by the peasants, a lot like the dragon pit in King's Landing. And then there was one more guy, Orion, who tried to lead an empire or lead an army into Valyria and retake Valyria. I'm sure no parallels to Orain Waters, who commands the navy that I assume the Golden Company has taken.
So I really like Orion as a Euron parallel because if Euron flies off to the north on a dragon and is never seen again, that's what happens to Orion.
Well, they both are, I think, because
Yeah.
Orain, just like Euron, takes a gigantic fleet, takes control of it, crowns himself king. So
And
he's
he'll probably go into the sea and never be seen again. Yeah.
right. So Orain, Orion, Euron, like they're all playing a similar role. They are dragonish people grasping a little too far.
Tim wants to know if Mew has been debunked.
Huh?
That's the Atlantis of the Pacific. Mew. As in Lemuria.
Oh,
I
okay.
think you're good, Tim.
I
I
know
think that one
nothing.
is still existing in the zone of unknown.
Okay, so it exists, but Cthulhu's there. Good luck.
Well, the thing about is about flood myths is most of them are local and they later become global, in conception. So if you're looking at the Pacific, obviously we have a place called Sundaland, which is just Indonesia and all the rest of those islands up to the Wallace Line. Essentially was used to be a subcontinent. Now it's a bunch of islands. So let's not get lost in that. But yeah. By the way, all the Graham Hancock stuff was sarcasm. I don't
I
really
know.
believe in the sages and the handbags. That was sarcasm. So
But just real quick, I mean, you mentioned Indonesia, and yes, they were flooded out of being a full subcontinent, and they had snake people come up from the waters and turn into them. So I'm just saying, Iron Islands used to be a subcontinent.
yeah, well, it should probably think about that. Yeah, since he did put Naga, on the Iron Islands. So that's the thing about some of his parallels. It's like you would think to look for Indonesian Buddhist ideas or whatever on the Iron Islands. Neither would we think to look for Arthurian stuff on the Iron Islands, but it is there, as well as Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah. Oh, love that.
Rudy Wild, the big Lightbringer and the Dragon Elite with the fake news. The younger Dryas are real. Well, no, the younger Dryas are real. No one's debating that. Many people are saying it. Caraxes was robbed. He's still on about Caraxes. God bless you,
That's
Rudy.
why I liked the post. Is Caraxes was robbed. He's our danger noodle boy, and he's the bestest boy.
Danger Noodle. That's right. That's my favorite name for him. Um. Okay, so let's see what else we got in the Discord here.
It's like a big red pool noodle. Just whap.
When Tyrion first comes to King's Landing, he doesn't immediately execute Littlefinger for framing him for Bran's murder. Common argument is that Littlefinger is irreplaceable. I think that's one where Tyrion might do it differently if he had a do-over. He thinks about it a lot. He just doesn't quite bring himself to do it. I think that question goes for Peter a lot. It's like, why didn't somebody just kill him? And then eventually somebody will.
Well, and yeah, it's also just kind of interesting because that's kind of Tyrion's evolution. Is he's a lot like Tywin, but Tywin is brutal as we know him the whole time. He is that brutal. If Tywin came to that information that he had been framed by Littlefinger's dead that afternoon. Whereas Tyrion is trying desperately not to become Tywin, yet the mechanism of the plot is turning him more and more like Tywin.
Which is bad. It's always bad. You don't want to, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true. Gray Area does call Caraxes the throat goat. That's true.
Yeah.
I feel like she gets away with that better. But so here's a good question. A little less related to Sansa and King's Landing. I've been thinking about Aerion Brightflame and why he drank wildfire so late in life. He's almost 40 and he does it the same year that his son is born. So Zedekiah is wondering, was he trying to put his spirit in a dragon for his son to ride, or was he trying to do some sort of specific magic having to do with his kid? That does seem like a weird coincidence that it happened in the same year.
I think he's very confused. I think he's like we talk about Aemon Targaryen, Maester Aemon saying that the dragon dreams killed all of his brothers. He's including Aerion Brightflame. So I think him not being able to interpret what is literal and what is, dreamscape figurative, it's kind of what the problem is with all of them. Like Darren has that dream of Dunk, with the dead dragon, and they don't know how to interpret it. And then Baelor's dead. Aegon, they misinterpret the Woods Witch's dream about, dragons being born at Summerhall or whatever. And nearly the whole house dies. So, excuse me. So for Arion, we have to assume that he knows some things, but not everything, because if he knew everything, they would all know everything. And that he's got it confused and backwards, which is kind of like what happens with Eris, right? He wants to turn
It's what happens with literally everyone until Dany, basically.
Right. Eris wants to turn King's Landing into his funeral pyre, and he thinks he'll be reborn as a dragon. That's kind of, what we assume will happen with Arian, except there's no dragon for him to become. So it's something is confused there.
Well, they do have eggs at that point. So he would have been trying to... It's basically the same thing as what I came to at Summerhall, where like Egg is trying to sacrifice himself, hatch the dragons for Rhaegar to have a dragon. So basically the question is, is it possible that we could actually be misjudging Arion a little bit in the sense that he didn't just do this out of sheer madness or to turn into a dragon? What if he was trying to sacrifice himself to wake a dragon for his kid? I mean, that's an interesting theory. We will eventually get there if Knight of the Seven Kingdoms keeps going. So
I've got something really bad about Summerhall.
What's that?
I've got something really bad about Summerhall.
Oh, and what's that?
So I think there's a lot of Lord of the Rings in Summerhall. It is, a castle for the Targaryens have a lot in common with the Númenorian, Gondorian kings. Mm-hmm. And Summerhall being at the base of and built into the Red Mountains is a lot like Minas Tirith being built into the base of, I forget the name of the mountain, but it's that big mountain range that goes through. And I see it as a Denethor scene. Bring me oil, and he's going to burn himself and Faramir to death, right? Like the heathen kings of old. Except in this iteration, it's, the Targaryens think that will turn them into dragon eggs. So Egg burning himself, and maybe his son, Prince Duncan, who is no longer in the line of succession. I don't want to believe it.
So that's about as dark as I will go on it. I think that he was trying to burn himself. But the whole two kings to wake a dragon thing, yeah, I have wondered if did he rope Duncan, Prince of Dragonflies, into this?
I wonder more than that, because everything in that seems to be sevens, right? Which is part of the problem, because 7 is others math. When you're birthing dragons, you do it in 3s, right? You have the Conqueror's 3 dragons, Dany's 3 dragons.
I didn't think about that.
Right. So I'm worried about him sacrificing him, Duncan, or Duncan the Small, and others, maybe up to 7 people to make this happen. Or maybe he wasn't intending to sacrifice anybody, but that's how it kind of symbolically played out.
I'm hoping that is the case, yeah.
I hope that's how it played out too, because if we already know they are all dead. So if they're going to be all dead, hopefully it wasn't because, Egg went, full cartoon villain.
So we have, so I've gotten through the questions here. Thank you, everyone, for putting the questions in the Discord. And again, if you want a Discord link, YouTube channel member Squisher, hit the join button, or you can join Patreon. You'll get an invite. I just put a fresh one out this morning. And as you can see here on the left, you can talk about all kinds of stuff. Creative writing, other TV shows, meetups. There's a pumping D&D group in here. You guys are playing Dungeons and Dragons a couple times a week. Book club, movie club, all kinds of stuff. So definitely a fun place to hang out. And the whole thing is that it's a piece of the old internet. It's actually community. People are nice to each other. Nobody's flaming each other, and we just talk about nerdy stuff. So if you like that, check it out. And it's time to play a game. It is 419. And
All right.
so I've got a little something ready. There is a Kingsguard knight. His name is Boros Blount, or Boros Blunt. You could say it that way. Okay? And Boros Blunt, let's imagine that Boros Blunt has been knocked unconscious. And there's a bunch of people, 7 people, we're carrying Boros Blunt, away from the battlefield. And as we're carrying him, we're rotating him. So we need 7 people for this Boros Blunt rotation. Just trying to keep this from getting banned.
Yeah. We
No, this is who would you praise Garth with? We get 7 picks
it's the
here.
opposite of a nightmare blunt rotation.
Yes.
Okay. Can we actually can I go to the bathroom real quick
We
before we get
absolutely
started?
can. I have Rhaegar music queued up, and we will do that. You can collect your thoughts, and then we will say the top 7 people that we would like to praise Garth with in Westeros. Coming. Hey there, friends. Hey there, friends. And we're back. We do thank you for joining us here on this 419, unless you're in Europe holiday. Let's see if, oh my goodness, what's that? That shouldn't be on camera. That shouldn't be on camera. I definitely didn't just praise Garth and run up and down the stairs in the last 45 seconds. Whew. So, Grey Waste Tim, he's got his roster already. Euron, Ramsay, The Mountain, Varamir Sixskins, Godric Borel, Patchface. That thing is not getting around the circle. Like, there's no way. It's not getting past the mountain. He'd burn it all the way down. He'd hit it so hard it would run all the way to one side. Ooh, Godric Borel. He's going to get it all wet. His hands are all webbed and watery.
These sticky fingers. He has literal sticky fingers.
True. Shout out Sticky Fingers from Onyx. All right, I will let you go first since you are the guest. Yeah, do
Okay.
not pass it. Do not have you never want a Borel in the rotation. Those webbed hands are never really dry. Yeah, those are horrible picks, Tim. I guess that was the
Yeah.
nightmare rotation.
I don't want to hang out with these people who are going to sacrifice me to an elder god. Anyway, daydream sour leaf rotation.
I would not smoke anything that Euron handed to me. That's for sure. What's in there?
No, that guy put angel and demon dust in that. Let's see. Okay, my first pick, I'm going to go with Dolorous Ed.
I shared this with you. Oh, you got it. Okay, cool. Dolorous Ed, that's a good pick. That's a real good pick. That's setting a good bar here. Okay, so I'm gonna go with. Oh, that's okay. I see some good stuff in the chat here. I do. I'm going to go with Archmaester Marwyn. He's got to be my first pick. He chews the sour leaf. He's just got a lot of interesting things to say. He seems like he would get more interesting the more baked he got. So I'm going to go with Archmaester Marwyn. Plus, he just is kind of cool. He's been to a shy, got the Valerian mask. He'd go around a couple times like, Marwyn, put on the mask. Okay, fine.
If you're trying to learn stuff, that's your guy. Like, that's the guy who knows too much about the plot of A Song of Ice and Fire. You get him high.
And you never know if he's telling you the truth either. He could be pulling your leg, or he could be telling you some obscure, interesting fact. You have no idea if it's true or not.
Yeah. I'm not trying to learn things from these people. I'm just trying to have a relaxed time as far away from Tim's rotation as possible.
Quaithe just cuts a mouth hole in her mask, Tim says. All right, your pick.
I'm going to say Olenna Tyrell.
Okay.
Yeah.
If she smokes, she's got the good stuff. I mean, she can only smoke very pure.
Yeah.
Well
and
cured.
She's going to have that filter removed even more. She's going to be sassy. She's just going to be a good time talking smack on everybody.
She's going to have that high garden dank. She's treating her glaucoma, as Greyways Tip says. Okay, well,
I had to mute before that cough laugh.
Well, I like the gender equal stuff here. So I will again pull right from the chat. I'm going to go with Shiera Seastar.
Ooh,
that's a great pick.
You for sure have a different goal in mind than me for this.
I do. I want it to be as mystical as possible.
You're getting shamanic with it.
There's still time for me to save my roster. Don't worry.
Oh no, I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think we're not necessarily coming at this from the same angle. And
the chat is killing either one of us. Some of the ones in the chat are terrific here.
So I'm gonna go with Davos. That was my next pick. I was gonna put him at some point, but I'm gonna make sure you don't get him, even though he's not gonna tell you anything important.
No, Davos keeps it real. I mean, you can at least trust him. Handle the blunt properly. The Boros. We're talking about Boros Blunt, Kingsguard Knight. Okay, I like that. Let's see here. I'm going to go with Greenbeard. Greenbeard. He likes to have fun. He stops by the inn. He hits up the innkeep. She's happy to see him. There's like his bed is kind of a party. He's nice to Arya. He dyes his beard. He's like, he's old, but he's still dyeing his hair fun colors and stuff. I mean, yeah.
Forever young.
I like Greenbeard.
Tough decisions.
Lots of good stuff in the chat, that's for sure.
You know what? I think this would be his first time, and we're gonna introduce him to the circle because I don't think he's ever assisted Sir Boros Blunt before. I'm gonna go with Edric Dane.
Okay, I like this idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna copy your motivation. Somebody that has not praised Garth that needs to. How about Sir Barristan the Bold? Like, bro, relax for a minute. Put your feet up. Try some of this. You're taking everything really seriously. He deserves it. He's worked really hard, and
I like it. No, it's also just funny because there's a. I usually don't pay attention to the memes that come out of the internet about all these characters, but because of his history, they call him Bystander Selmy.
It's perfect.
Yeah. So
we know he'll only hit it the right amount of times and quickly pass it along. He's not gonna, bogart it or anything. So
yeah.
We changed his name from Barristan the Bold.
Okay. All right. I got one, and I think this is a way that we're gonna squash some existing beef and really, really turn enemies into friends here. And I'm gonna bring Gendry in here.
Okay.
Him and Edric, I like
Gendry's
them both.
passing, by the way. He's like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I hate to say it.
Yeah, I don't want it.
Don't want it. Yeah, he's kind of. If you say so, though. Well, he's in the rotation. Maybe you need one person in the rotation that isn't partaking, just to keep an eye on things.
I feel like he just, he doesn't inhale. He
He
just
feels kind of straight
politely.
edge. He does. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some good ones in the chat here. I'm gonna go with kind of the most obvious pick, just to make sure he doesn't get left out. Tormund Giantsbane.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just kind of a no-brainer.
Although you
Trying to
don't
be
have
creative here, but let's not overlook the obvious.
you don't have two more picks. The horn blower himself, like you think those vacuum lungs are gonna let anything get to the next two people?
No, that's true. He's killing it. It's very Snoop Dogg. I ain't even hit it yet, man. Shit. But but it'd still be worth it just to have him in the rotation. I mean,
Oh yeah.
he
You
would get
can't-
really baked and tell a great story and be like, yeah, that was worth it.
No, he was a vibe choice, and he's on my list. Damn. He was one. He was damn. Got me.
Jojen Reed is too morose for the circle, guys. Yeah, that's. I don't
Yeah,
think that's
I don't think his health would allow it either.
It's permanently baked anyway.
I'm gonna go with Jory Cassell.
Okay.
I just feel like he'd be into it and he'd just be chill about it.
So I like
And,
this because Jory's the
yeah.
kind of guy that still gets his work done and takes everything seriously. He's not a slacker, but yeah, no, he's out by the well, puffing a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he drinks with the men, but he's never shirked his duty. Not a shirker.
Yeah, Jory's a real one. That's why he had to die. George kills everyone. He's like too good for this world. Okay, so let's think here. Oh, I'm just going to shout out in the chat Gemma Lannister. That's not my pick, but that's a great pick. That's
a good one. We
is
might
a-
have to do some honorable mentions after this.
yeah, perhaps. I just want to be careful with my last two picks here. But gosh, who do I want to? I'm gonna say Asha Greyjoy.
That's another really good one that I absolutely would have chosen.
She's just. I just want to be in her presence, man. She's so intense and she's ironborn. Like, she would be the kind of person that doesn't relax often, but when she does, like, that'd be cool. So.
Yeah, she's Trace a tomboy, little alt rock chick. Yeah, I'm not surprised you're going after her.
Asha Greyjoy is like, she's packing a giant tube and she's putting some rosin on there and then she's hitting the whole thing and she's just looking at you and hitting it and then she clears it. That's nice. No cough. That's
What I
how I
like
see
is-
that going down.
Which character do you see as having the sleep apnea mask and hooking it up to the implement?
That might be Archmaester Marwyn.
Yeah.
But you've got one more pick.
I am struggling. I have two people that I want to choose.
I've got a secret bonus round plan to give you a chance. It will
Okay.
help you. The bonus round will be to your advantage. But go ahead and see if you
Okay.
can pull this team out of the gutter here.
Oh, god damn it. I'm gonna go with okay, I'm gonna save that one for the bonus round. I am gonna go with Maester Lewin. That is who I was gonna pick. Downtown Clanny Brown tagged me and wrote Maester Lewin, which kind of underscored it. He was right. That is who I wanted. It was one of four people I wanted, but you took two of them.
So the bonus round is I get one more pick. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Quentin Martell does need to chill out, but that's not my job. I'm not taking that one on. And I don't trust the Sand Snakes, so that's out.
I'm not your chill Sherpa, bro.
I'm gonna say Varys.
Okay. Yeah, you're just trying to get information out of these people. This is like alternative questioning.
I want interesting stories. Like Varys busted that whole thing out about the sorcerer burning his junk on the pyre, and there was a voice and stuff. I mean, I just think, and he's got the shadows of power. You know, who's the powerful guy, and he's got metaphors, and he's got a sense of humor. He's wicked funny. I think Varys would be a great rotation.
And he keeps swimming.
So the bonus round is you get to pick somebody from Lord of the Rings, which is better.
Damn, because I was gonna pick now if we can do it. I guess this is just an honorable mention. I wanted to do Miranda Royce.
That would have been a better pick than about half of yours, yeah.
Lord of the Rings. Let's see, because there are a number of people in Lord of the Rings who are already doing it. Let's be clear. Tolkien liked his. It's not marijuana. Pipeweed.
Long bottom leaf.
Yeah.
I feel like there are two most obvious picks.
I'm gonna say Faramir.
Faramir. Okay. Well, I got Tom Bombadil, so you lose. And
Tom Bombadil.
It was the obvious pick. Come on, man. I was just trying to give you a chance to save it. You didn't take it.
Gandalf isn't the obvious pick.
That would have been the other one, either Gandalf or Tom Bombadil. Yeah.
And of course, any of the hobbits.
I hate that.
They are all on that shit. They grow it.
Yeah, Treebeard. Okay, so I'd smoke with Treebeard. That's the whole rotation too. Nobody else, just me and Treebeard. Y'all can. Eru Iluvatar, Tim.
I finished my script for Gawain and the Green Knight, and I was referencing Treebeard at the very end of it.
Little hobbits.
Very long time to say.
So there we go. And that brings us to slightly over 2 hours. And so I will take last call for questions, and then we'll get out of here.
Let's
yeah, I'm not a Hobbit fan. Sorry, River Mist Fae. I mean, I don't really hate them. I just think they're dumb. They're stupid little hobbits.
He's not about the whimsy.
Just, yeah. They have to be in there. I acknowledge that. I'm just teasing. They're fine. They live in dirty holes. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Not a dirty, nasty, wet hole.
Unsubscribe.
Hole. And that means comfort. Well, Kim, did you expect us to praise Garth in front of the camera?
Tim loves to get streams demonetized. That's his whole thing. By the way, shout out, Grey West Tim did a great live stream yesterday on his channel, which I hear was a real hoot. I was recording and I missed it, but you can go check out Grey West Tim channel, and if one of the mods will drop the link in the chat, I hear it was about Lovecraft and squishers and stuff. Yeah. Is that true, Tim? Oh, I guess, yeah, we do need a poll to see who did this the best. I was just claiming victory. That's not very scientific.
Well, you might have claimed victory in the bonus round without much.
Faramir.
I feel like Faramir is a little bit more chill than Boromir, and
well, between the two of them.
And like he'd just be like a good time with it. I think most of the characters are a little bit too high strung, except the ones who are already smoking it.
Actually, you're kind of right. Faramir does seem kind of baked. He's like mad chill. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so I'm not winning, but Sean likes to smoke with jocks.
First of all, you've got children in your rotation. Okay, Edric Storm and Gendry are both underage, so you're arrested.
He's nearly a man grown. Okay, all right. We have different laws around this. Also,
Olenna Tyrell's not even letting them in the circle. She's like, no, run off to bed, children. Then the circle's smaller. Then it's just you and Jory and Maester Luwin.
So after she's assisted Sir Blunt, she is okay with it because assisting Sir Blunt put her in a different mood.
In the
when she's
Reach, we don't
fooling
mind
around.
a discreet little bit of buggery and that kind of thing, as long as it's chill.
They don't care.
Mm. Well, the Dolores Head pick is solid. Atlantis is real. No, the Green Sahara is not Atlantis. I've looked into that. That's not it. One of the reasons why Atlantis is not real is because it doesn't show up anywhere in the genes. And that's what really kills the theory. If there was a place like Atlantis where lots of people lived and then went to another place, you'd be able to see that imprint in the genes. Instead, what we have are Proto-Indo-European dispersal and Anatolian farmer dispersal and more dispersals going back before that. So you can't just pick a circle in the desert and go, that's Atlantis. I think it was because the Sahara used to be, less of a desert and stuff. That's not. Yeah. I looked into that one.
The time when the Sahara was not a desert was so far beyond human history that, yeah.
Well, no,
Anyway, guys,
it goes in phases. I mean, the entire thing, yes, but certain regions were. But yeah, it's an allegory. Atlantis is an allegory. That's right.
we have almost 400 people still watching this stream. Let's see some more votes. Like, I don't think I'm gonna win here, but can we make this like a little bit less embarrassing for me?
Crayways, Tim murdered your team in the chat. I can't even repeat what he said.
I didn't see it. What did I miss?
I will say it. He said that he called your rotation an Epstein rotation. He said it's old rich people and kids.
Oh my God.
That's so inappropriate, Tim.
Tim is like, I don't think people realize, like, I used to do pretty dark stand-up comedy. I'm holding a lot back here in order to not demonetize these streams.
Tim has never heard
just
of
comes
holding
in with the
anything
nuke.
back. He keeps it real. That's all he's heard of. Is
Tim
keeping
comes
it
in
real.
with the nuke.
I probably shouldn't have said that. Anyway. Oh, it's mad times that we live in, folks. It's mad times. Oh. Yeah, most of my rotation is like chalk. You know, Archmaester Marwyn is smoking. Sierra, she's smoking. Tormund is smoking. Varys is smoking. You know, behind the walls and stuff. Barristan needs to smoke. Greenbeard is smoking, and Asha Greyjoy is just a wild card.
That's kind of how I looked at it. Is Edric and Gendry, they need to smoke together to squash it. I'm building bridges here. You know, a Song of Ice and Fire is all about reconciliation. And then, you know,
if you get Arya in there, now it's wholesome. Like the three of them smoking, and yeah, that's wholesome. Like,
well, I think they both need some distance from her. They're a little bit fixated, and you know, but yeah, Davos is there for vibes, 100%. Edison Tollett, I don't have to defend that. Olenna, she needs it. She needs to chill a little bit, but also I just want to hear her talk smack.
Olenna is like, no, I'm not going to hit that. I have something, and she pulls it out. She's got something better.
Yeah, like she takes something prescription.
That's definitely a solid pick. All right. Well, so the chat, yeah, I don't see any last questions. I see mostly people having fun here.
This is because this was not what I prepared for, sir. I thought we were talking about building our own house or Kingsguard or whatever, like we were talking about on the phone. And then
I realized it was 419, and I pulled
Boris
out
blood rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all imbibing, and he's the one having dreams.
Your rotation would turn into everyone just listening to Dolores Said and Olenna talk. It'd just be like, or just let them go. All right. Well, I am claiming victory now. Where does Sansa end the series? Queen in the North. We don't know. I don't know if George has decided that, because he said recently he was kind of thinking about killing her off, and now he might not. So
he trolls us, though.
It's hard to say.
I tend to think she will become Queen in the North.
You do or don't?
I think she will become Queen in the North.
I kind of think so too. It makes a lot of sense. So
It's just there has to be a power structure there when all of this ends, and who else is going to be that stabilizing force? It's not Jon.
yeah, we've seen the Starks could use a little bit more in the political acumen department. So hopefully they can make use of all of Sansa's unfortunate experience. Like I said, it seems perfectly set up. The North, yeah, I see Westeros fragmenting. I don't see it being as unified. I see the decentralized power thing. I do think that's going to happen. I'm going to create a Senate or something. I don't know.
Well, and how many of the, air quotes, seven kingdoms stay as part of the realm, right? So, like, if she's queen of the North, then they're not in the seven kingdoms, right? They've declared independence, and, and they may not be the only ones. It's going to get messy, and they're probably better as being, seven different countries and trying to maintain peace through that rather than fighting over who gets to rule all of them.
Yeah, it's both the way that the Iron Throne has been used as a symbol in the story, exactly, Sean. And then also the parallel to the Weirwood Net that we're talking about. Like the Weirwood Net is this source of too much power that's going to have to be kind of shut down and decentralized. And Bran as a king, that's going to be part of his role. So I also think he's going to facilitate the sort of decentralization of Westeros political power. I think that would be cool. I'm not like convinced it's going to happen, but I think it would be interesting.
Yeah, and we also, like, when we make these predictions, like, even if we're right, we don't necessarily know what flavor that's going to come in. Like, a lot of the details are going to be technically the same as we saw in the show. There's going to be more justification, more build up. It just makes more sense when George does it than the rushed hack job that they put through. So
Um, yeah. So I also think we might get like a no magic ending in general. Like George is just closing the chapter on this entire crazy, existence and pushing it into more like mundane reality. So,
Well, so that's a huge thing in fantasy literature that has basically evolved from epic poetry, because there has to be a way to explain, like, we're telling you all these stories of, like, Beowulf or Sigurd or King Arthur or blah blah blah, and they're all doing these, magic impossible things, right? How did we get here, where in this world where there's no magic, we believe in a god, and we have, like you said, this mundane existence. And the idea is that, these the great heroes of that time took out the great monsters of that time, and the Age of Heroes ended. That's why, George named an era the Age of Heroes. That's straight out of Beowulf. They say the Age of Heroes has ended when Beowulf kills the green dragon, and now we live in the post-magic world. Tolkien did it. He every age, he depowers his people. They become less powerful until the end, when it's basically a post-magic world. It's the same thing in King Arthur. It's the same thing in Sigurd. It's the same thing if you go through, like, any mythology that starts to become a history or calls itself a history is going to go that way with it.
So I'm glad you mentioned Beowulf. I've been meaning to ask you about this. This is a piece of art, but it is a golden dragon horn from Beowulf. Is there a dragon horn, in fact, in Beowulf, and what's the deal with it?
Well, there's a dragon horn in the movie, and it is very heavily symbolic. The people who made the animated Beowulf movie, they knew what they were talking about. They knew the esoterica of it. And it's hard to communicate the esoterica of it. So, like, one thing that we've talked about is that Grendel's mother, obviously, she's a disgusting monster and she's ultra powerful, and Beowulf is trying to kill her.
Again, good looking lady is what you meant to say. Carry on.
Right. Well, anyway, she is representing a sexual symbolism. It is esoteric. It's not at the narrative level. So when they made her for the movie, they cast Angelina Jolie and did motion capture for it. and they made her very sexy, and they made her have a sexual relationship with Beowulf. And a lot of people said like, oh, that they didn't need to do that sexual punch up. Like, why didn't they just capture the original story? And it's like, well, that's kind of what they were doing. They were just capturing the symbolic rather than the narrative level. And I think it made for a better story.
And what's that got to do with the horn?
Well, this is another thing that happens is they're seeing the esoterica of it. When you talk about it is a drinking horn. It is a horn that you blow in order to call armies or summon monsters, blah, blah, blah. But it's also like the golden gift of a king. And it goes into several of the kennings for Beowulf. So like the Lord of those rings, the giver of gifts, distributor of gold, him of the golden horn, So like does he directly have a golden horn in the books? Or in the original epic poem? If he does, it's not super emphasized, but I mean, probably yes.
Okay, so there's not necessarily some big clue about Dragonbinder waiting.
I don't think it's a dragon horn in the story, but again, like there is a dragon and it has horns. He uses a hunting horn. He uses, a drinking horn. Like all of these things are things, and they are used symbolically in the epic poem. So when they combined them all into one thing, and that was Hrothgar's drinking horn, that could also blow, and he gives it to Beowulf, then it meant something. So yeah,
Hrothgar, that's a nice Ironborn name.
Yeah, combining all the things, and that's the character that gets named after the most. Like if you go into Aragon, the king of the dwarves in Aragon, his name is Hrothgar. It's even spelled the same.
Well, that's what I've got coming for y'all next week is a video about the Mance's Dragonbinder, the Horn of Joramun that's actually a dragon horn. What's the deal with that? I've got like 45 minutes of that coming, so look out for that this week. And once again, Sean, you are working on Greek myth now on your Patreon?
Yeah, so the Greek myth is on the Patreon. I'll be coming out with a video about a lot of the stuff we were talking about earlier, actually, where the evolution of people like Persephone and Poseidon and how they became the gods we're more familiar with, which ones got cut, which ones got added, that kind of stuff, where they came from. And then on YouTube, I finished the script and I'll be filming this week of the Gawain and the Green Knight Tolkien King Arthur video.
Very good. Well, thanks for teaching us a bit about all that folklore, Sean. And with that, I will say, have yourself a good weekend. And once again, look out for a video about magic horns this week. And I'll see you next Sunday.